Well, hello and welcome to another mini masterclass. Today I'm going to be showing our great Hugs and Kisses mini frame products and how to use them. We're going to be going step by step through a little design to make this one here. So it's just a little embroidered Josephine brooch. I can show you that. So we'll be going through a few simple embroidery stitches, and I'll also tell you where you can get some more help. And we'll also go through the process of putting it all together, so how to put your embroidery or whatever you use into your frame and finish it off ready to use or hang. My name's Helen Stubbings and I'm the designer behind the Hugs and Kisses brand. We've been around since 2001. I design projects and books and teach around the world in all areas of quilting and stitching. So my favourites are embroidery and stitchery, English paper piecing and applique. We also have several products that we've designed to make all these processes easier and to make it a really fun thing to do. So great therapy, and we make it as simple as possible for you to get the best results. Today's product is our mini frames. We cut these in our warehouse on our laser machine. We have several different sizes and designs, many actually, and they come in 3 colorways. So they come just in the raw MDF timber that you can leave raw, so it's nice and organic, or you can paint. So this one's been painted red and I've just used a spray paint, but you can just brush with a faux art paint. This one's been done in silver. They also come in black, so that's like a coated MDF in black, and also in a white option. And we have them from little 2-inch sizes here, put that back on, here right up to 6-inch. So the little ones come as brooches with a little brooch back in the packet, and the larger ones include a little wall hanger here that you can add on to the back. We also do, we have some for name tags and necklaces. We have several different designs that you can use as necklaces. These ones are great for a necklace. You just add a jump ring and that can become a necklace. I'll show you a few samples of those. So this one here is actually another little mini masterclass. If you look at the links, you'll find that one as a class. This one here I've done just with 1/4-inch hexies. So little tiny hexagons over our iron-on papers, leave-in papers, put into their mini frame and then on a chain as a necklace. Lots and lots of ideas, only limited by your imagination. Okay, so today, as I said, we're going to be making our 6-inch foxglove design. Sorry, not 6-inch, it's a 4-inch foxglove design. It's just got a few little embroidery stitches, so we're going to be doing the back stitch, the lazy daisy, French knots, and we're even going to try a little bullion stitch. Now, if you're new to embroidery and you actually want more help with your embroidery stitches, we have a great program that's completely free. It's called Stitch Sunday, and I'll pop the link up on the video. You can go and sign up there with your email address, and then you'll get step-by-step photo tutorials of the 12 basic stitches. They'll come once a week. Originally they were on a Sunday, but it depends on the day that you sign up, but maybe Sunday is a good day to do your practice, and you'll get a little design to download and practice on for each stitch that we teach you. So they're much more comprehensive stitches. Today I'll be brushing over them reasonably quickly. If you need more help, search out those free lessons. Okay, so you can actually purchase a kit for this project from us, and again I'll put the link up on the video and also in the comments. And if you pre-purchase the kit, then it comes with a piece of fabric with some Helen stabilizer, that's H630 stabilizer that fuses onto the back, and an iron-on transfer. And it also comes obviously with your frame kit as well, so you can make it up. You would need to supply your own threads. So today we're going to use our transfer onto some white fabric. I've already got my Helen on the back of it. And you'll also need some embroidery threads. I'm going to be using these Presentia Finca 16 pearl threads. I love these threads to embroider with. They're a 16 weight, that's the finest weight you can get in a pearl, and they are equivalent to about 1.5 strands of a strand of cotton, so just perfect to cover your transfer lines. And it just means you only need to use one thread, you don't need to split threads and put them back together again. So I've just got an array of colours. You can use any thread you like. You can just use floss that you have, and I'd probably use 2 strands, or a pearl 12, the pearl 16s, whatever you have in your stash. The threads don't come with the kit if you order the kit from us. However, if you'd want a thread kit, then just let us know. We can put together a thread kit in the Presentias for you as well. You'll love them. If you do really love them, we also have a Thread of the Month club where you can collect the whole series of Presentia 16 pearl threads over 1 or 2 years, depending on the option that you choose. Okay, you'll also need today some embroidery needles. Now, we just use and recommend our Hugs and Kisses stitchery needles. Keep it simple so you know what it's for, but they are just a size 7 crewel needle. So you need a crewel needle. That's not cruel, C-R-U-E-L, like nasty cruel, it's crewel. And they just have a lovely sharp point and a long eye for easy threading. And they're the right size for the thread that we're using. You'll also need some nice embroidery scissors, or some sort of scissors. And I suggest a 4-inch hoop. If you've got a bigger piece of background fabric, you could use a 6-inch hoop, but we're just going to use a 4-inch today. And then when we come to putting together the frame, you'll just need some clear craft glue, and I suggest either some clothes pegs or some wonder clips. Okay, some sort of binding clips. Okay, and they're really handy, and you'll see that when we get to the putting together stage. So while I'm getting myself cleaned up and set up here, I'd love to know where you're all from. So if you've got the comments there, just pop in the comments where you're watching from. And if you ever make this project, I'd love you to show me a picture as well. So make sure you do share that with us. Okay, if you're watching this now and live, that's great. You can come back to it anytime once you've ordered your kit and got your goods together to follow along and make with me. If you've already got your kit, you can follow along and make with me right now. Otherwise, you may be watching on YouTube. If so, subscribe to that button down there so that you get a notification every time we do a new little mini masterclass. Or if you're watching on Facebook, do follow our Facebook page again so you don't miss any of our tutorials. Okay, so I have my iron on transfer. It's just this little, it just looks like a printed piece of paper here, just with some little dots and lines on. Doesn't look much at all really. I'm going to place that down onto my fabric, and then I've just got a dry hot iron, and I'm just going to transfer. So I'm just going to press, I'm not going to iron. You need to keep that still, and if you need to lift it up, make sure you hold one corner and lift and move to the next spot. Now the longer you leave it on there, the darker it will be. Once you think you've finished, keep holding the paper and just lift it up to check you've got it all. And there we are, there's our transfer on there, so we didn't need to trace. It's the beauty of buying a kit. Otherwise you just use a light box and a ceramic pencil, or you may prefer a Pigma pen. You just have to be careful because they're permanent, so don't make a mistake. But a ceramic pencil on a light box with a design underneath, and you can trace through your fabric. Then I've pre-prepared and put a piece of fusible H630 Helen on the back. It's like a very lightweight fusible batting, and that's my stabilizer, but it's also going to act as a little bit of padding when I put my little framed picture together. Okay, next I'm going to place that into my hoop. So I have one of these plastic hoops. They're excellent. That's pretty much all I use because they're inexpensive and they don't break like the old wooden ones. So it has an inner ring, and on the top of that it says top. It's actually written top there. It might say right side up or this side up or top. But the top is the edge that has this little ridge on it here. If you can see a little ridge there, that's the top. So place that on your table with the top to the top, or the ridge to the top. And then place your prepared fabric underneath. Open out your hoop. And then just pop that over. Open open it out as much as you can so you can get it over. Okay, then start to do it up as tight as you can, and then you're going to pop it underneath that ridge. So the ridge is actually popped out through the top of the outer hoop. That will grip your fabric very tightly, but it also means that the area that you're going to be working on, and finish tightening it up, is raised. It's right at the top, so you don't need to be scooping down in here and trying to get your stitches down into the hoop. It's actually sitting above the outer hoop and you've got full access to it, plus it's holding it nice and firmly. Okay, and then I've tightened it up the screw as far as I can, and our hoop's ready. Now it doesn't have to be drum tight, it can move a little bit like that, and you actually want it to so that we can manipulate our stitches with it. Alright, so our needle, I said we were using a crewel number 7 needle, and that is the right size for the thread that I'm using. So I'm going to start and do the green stems here using a back stitch. So I'm going to get a length of my pearl thread, about fingertip to elbow length, and thread my needle. Now I have little YouTube videos on my YouTube channel just about things like hooping, threading your needle and tying a knot. So if you need help with anything like that, I'm just going to brush over them now, but go to the separate videos on YouTube and it will go very in depth on just little hints and tricks on how to do that the best way. So I'm going to come up at the top here, and I'm just looking at this in my order of work, so I feel I could stitch to there, then jump across and stitch up there. And a back stitch. The first stitch we're going to go forward and then forward again. Then thereafter we're going to come back into the hole at the end of the stitch before. Now the important things to note with a back stitch are, when we go back into that hole before, we need to go back into the exact same hole. If you miss it by even a thread, then you get little white dots between your stitches. And the idea with a back stitch is that we want a solid line of stitching. Okay, the second thing to remember is to pierce that fabric exactly in the middle of the line that's printed there. That's why we need a sharp pointed needle, because if our needle wasn't sharp, the weave of the fabric might decide that it wants your needle to go down into the hole of the weave, and that might not be the middle of the line. Okay, even if you go once to the left and once to the right, you'll get a very subtle zigzag line instead of a straight line. So we want to pierce the line directly in the middle, and the sharp point allows us to do that. The third thing to remember is to keep your stitches all an even length. Now there's no right or wrong length. I'm not going to say it has to be 2 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch, but just keep them even and determine the length by the design. If it's a very tiny design with lots of long, short, tight curves, then you'll want a smaller stitch length. If it's a larger design with a lot of long straight lines, then you might be able to go a little bit bigger, but not hugely bigger, just a little bit. Now I've come to the end there. Now because I've got my pellin on the back, I can easily jump across to here and you won't see that run of thread on the back. I wouldn't go any further than that, any bigger jump, but just that little jump. Because I'm going to have flowers in between, I'm going to jump across there. So remember, back into the end of the hole of the stitch before each time. Now you notice I'm doing what I call a scoop stitch. So I'm doing 2 steps of the stitch in one pass. The other way of stitching is a stab stitch, which is where you go to the back and then you stab around till you get the right spot and you come back up to the top and then you stab back to the back. So 1 step at a time. The scoop stitch that I do, it's double the speed because you're doing 2 steps in one. Now to do that, I use my finger underneath. So I pop my needle through till I feel it prick me. Then I move it along and I push it up with the finger underneath, and I can see where the point is, so I just slide it back until where I want it, where I want it, and then I push it through. So all the work is done by the finger underneath. I'm not trying to scoop it up with energy on this hand. I'm just using my finger underneath to pop the end up where I want it. And that's just the way I prefer to stitch. I also stitch from right to left for me, or I can stitch away from myself like this, or I can stitch sort of towards myself. But more often than not, find what you're comfortable with, and as you're stitching, just turn the hoop. Okay. Alright, so I've done my 2 stems. Now you'll notice here we've got some green lazy daisy leaves. So these are detached chain or lazy daisy. So while I'm nice and close, I'm going to go back on this side and do those 2 leaves. Now they're quite a long lazy daisy, so the dots are the top and the bottom of my leaves. So I'm coming up at the bottom. I'm going to lay my thread around, go back in the same hole, and then come up at the outside point. Pull it firmly but not tight. I want it to sit nice and relaxed in a nice petal shape or a leaf shape. And then my needle goes into the fabric over that loop so it locks the loop down. And then I'm going to come back and do the other side. Now I could have done this on the other side while I was there, but I was just showing you the back stitch on its own first. There's my other leaf on that side. So I'm not going to jump from here across to there. That's too far to jump, and I'll have a big loop there that could distort my fabric. I'm going to go to the back and show you how I finish off. So I just run through some stitches that are nearby, taking care not to distort my stitches on the front by pulling it too tight, and run a couple of times under the stitches until it's secure. Now I can also go under there, form a loop, and go through that loop and tie a knot. Okay, and then I'm going to trim it off. Now I think I'll be able to squeeze out 2 leaves on the other side, so I'm going to tie another knot. Just missed that one. Again, if you don't know that easy knot, pop onto my YouTube channel and find the video that teaches you how to tie a knot. Okay, up at the bottom, back down in the same hole, come up at the end of my leaf and lock it down. Come over to the other side and do the same. Okay, that's my leaves. Right, because we've just done lazy daisies, next we're going to do our lazy daisy flowers here. They're like little bluebells or forget-me-nots. So I'll find my blue thread. You always thread the end that comes off the reel and not the end you cut. That tends to be the right of way to have the twist of the thread going the right way. Oh, and I missed that knot again. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3 flowers, and these are my dots for the inside of my petals. I haven't put dots for the outside. So I'm going to use my eye now to keep them all about even. Okay, so up, down in the same hole, come out at the end of your petal, over the outside edge, and then in for your next one. Making sure that you get a nice relaxed curved petal. And these are 5 petal daisies I've done. I think an odd number always looks good. So when you're finding your outside point, I think of a little stick man doing a star jump, and that's how I spread them out evenly. These are fairly open flowers, these ones. I've left a big gap in the middle for our little yellow centre later on. Okay, that's my first one. Now I'm going to jump over here and do the second one. final petal. Okay, now I'm just going to run under here. Be careful not to distort my petals because I've got them nice and round. And then just tie off over here under my back stitch line because that's a little more secure. Okay, there's my 3 little blue daisies. Next I'm going to do our lavender up here. So get some of the lavender colour. And we'll do these with French knots and then I'll show you colonial knots. Okay, so I'm going to start here. Now a hoop for a knot stitch I think is imperative, okay? I can't do any embroidery without a hoop, but particularly for knot stitches because you want 2 hands, so you can just drop it there and it's going to hold your fabric nice and taut. Take the thread in your left hand, place it over the needle, wrap it around the needle, put the point of the needle into the fabric close by but not the same hole where you came up, pull it down onto the fabric and then pull through to the back. Now if you don't pull it through to the fabric first, pull it onto the fabric first, that's when you get little knots and loops further up your thread. So wrap around the needle, into the fabric close by, onto the fabric and through to the back. And you can see with a hoop how much control you've got and how quickly you can do that. I'm not saying you have to work with a hoop, some people don't like to. But if you haven't tried before or you've tried and failed, I just urge you to have another go. The main reason for the hoop is that it's another set of hands, so you're not putting any stress on your hands, your wrists, your shoulder and your neck by trying to hold that fabric out flat like that while you're stitching on it. It gives you great vision and I believe it does also help with your tension. That's my opinion and I would strongly urge you just for your stitching health so you can stitch for many years to come to protect all that muscle strain by holding it with your hands instead of a hoop, and particularly when we come to knot stitches. Now for the purposes of this video I'm going to jump across here. I probably would end and redo that, but I don't think my this thread colour is going to shadow through, so I'm going to jump across here. Now, in case you're wondering, the oval circle on my transfer is actually my cutting line, so I'm not going to be stitching that. That's just my cutting line for when we finish off our little mini frame. Now if you wanted a bigger knot, strictly speaking, a knot stitch is just one wrap. And if you want a bigger knot, then you, whoops, I went through the same hole there and pulled my knot to the back. If you want a bigger knot, then you should use a thicker thread. However, we're all guilty of doing 2 or 3 wraps to get a bigger knot, and generally you can get away with it. Okay, so there's our French knots. Now you can see on my original one that they're a little larger, so I either used a darker thread or I did 2 or 3 knots to get a little bit larger knots on there. Okay, so I'll just finish that thread off. And next we're going to do our little yellow centers. And for these ones I'm going to show you a colonial knot. This is a much nicer knot than a French knot. It takes a little longer, but French knots tend to tip over, so they go from one side to the other and don't stay exactly where they are. Colonial knot is like a little loop with a hole in the middle, like a donut, and they sit exactly where you want them, but they're a little bit trickier. So I've broken it down into a few steps. So you're going to hold, again, pop your hoop on the table and come back so you've got plenty of space to move and you're not fiddling around down here tight on your fabric. Hold the thread in the left hand and put the right hand with the needle with thumbnails touching, and the needle pointing to 12 o'clock. So the needle's pointing straight towards the hole where you're going to do it. You take the needle over the thread, still pointing to 12 o'clock, pick up the thread and turn it to 9 o'clock. Then you take the thread over the needle. I'm going to do 2 wraps this time. Put the point of the needle in the fabric next to but not the same hole. Pull the wraps onto the fabric, that's a very important step, and then pull down through to the back. And you see you've got this lovely little donut sort of shape there. I'm going to jump across here and we'll do it again. Thumbnails kissing, needle pointing to 12 o'clock. Over the thread, pick up the thread, turn to 9 o'clock. 2 wraps, or however many you want, 1 or 2, into the fabric, onto the fabric, and then pick it up and pull it through to the back. Do it again. Thumbnails kissing, 12 o'clock. Over the thread, pick it up, turn to 9. Over twice, into the fabric, onto the fabric, through to the back. So it's actually a figure 8 knot. You may have a different way of doing it, but I've just broken it down into these steps so that it makes sense. So once you've got the hang of it, you can just do it quite quickly. But what you're doing is a figure 8 wrap around the thread. Slow it down once more. Thumbnails kissing, needle to 12 o'clock. Over the thread, pick it up, 9 o'clock. Over the needle, once or twice. Into the fabric, onto the fabric. Oops, don't pierce the thread. Into the fabric, onto the fabric, through to the back. This is a colonial knot or the candle wicking knot. So it's used for candle wicking, which is an embroidery technique that has a series of evenly spaced knots to make up the line design of the design that you're doing. Generally done traditionally in a candle wick thread, but generally done in just like a cream thread on cream fabric. Okay, and our last knot. Okay, and there is our knots. So let's tie that off, and we've got one more stitch to do. Again, if you're not experienced in these stitches and this has been too quick for you, join up to my Stitch Sunday free embroidery lessons and it will take you step by step through them. So now we're just going to do a bullion stitch and stitch our little bee here. Okay, so it's got 2 long bullions for the body and then a lazy daisy for the wings, and then I've just done a little straight stitch over the top. So for our bullion, now if you were doing a lot of bullions, or if you're doing bullion roses, then technically you should switch to a milliner or a straw needle because they're the same width right along the shaft and it makes it easier to pull the wraps over the eye of the needle. But we're just going to use this because we're only going to do 2 and we can just have our wraps a little loose so we can get them over. So I've come up at the end of the bullion. I'm going to go back down at the other end and then back up at the beginning again, and then leave your needle in the fabric so you've got a loop. Okay, a loop of thread. Don't do this with a small bit of thread, have plenty of thread so you don't get tangled up. Then again, set your hoop on the table and place your finger under the needle like that. Take the thread in your right hand and then we're going to do enough wraps around the needle to fill that space there. For a straight bullion, we need to have the exact number for that. If we wanted a curved bullion, you'd do 2 mini wraps and it will curve out. So I'm just going to guess. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now just tuck those wraps down and see if it's about the right size. Might be a couple too many. I'll just go back to 10. Okay, and I've got them nice and smooth and even there. Grab the wraps between your thumb and finger and let go of the thread, and then take the needle and pull it through. Keep holding the wraps until you pull all the way through. Okay, then we're going to lay it down, and see it's just a little bit messy there. So while you're pulling this thread with your left hand, just run the needle underneath to smooth out those wraps, and then just tuck them down so they're nice and tight. And then we need to finish the stitch off by going through to the back and locking our little bullion down. Now I've done 2 bullions for our bee's body, so up at the beginning, down at the end, and back up at the beginning. Drop it, put your finger there, and we did 10 wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Smooth them down, pull the needle through the wraps, lay it down. As you're pulling, just smooth them out. Okay, use your nail to push them down. Finish the stitch off by going through to the back. Now we just need a detached chain or a lazy daisy for his wings. So up at A, down at A, up at the end, thread under the needle, and one on the other side. And there's his wings. Okay, end off our thread. Now, I'm not a person who worries about the back of my work. It's always going to go into something else. So yes, I jump and I use knots, but I always use that stabilizer so that it hides a lot of that jumping and knots. So if you are a Royal School of Needlework person, then you'll probably be a lot neater than me. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is the little bee stripes and his little stinger on the end there. So I've just got a little bit of red here. And I'm just going to put a tiny little straight stitch here for his little stinger or tail, and then 2 little straight stitches like stripes. I don't know, do bees even have stripes? They do have stripes. So this is representative of little stripes on a bee. You could change it into a butterfly. Okay, and finish him off. Just like that. Okay, so let's move all our threads out of the way. We're done with that. And we can loosen off the screw and remove it from the hoop. Now, if the creases were going to be where we would see it, then I'd give that a press, and probably on a woolly mat like we've got here, like a nice woolly mat, and that would give a nice press without dampening your stitches. So now we're going to take our little brooch kit, and you'll see in here we have 3 pieces. So we've got the outer frame, then we've got a piece that sits neatly inside it, and then we've got a piece that is actually larger and it won't fit inside. That's our backing piece, so we can get rid of that for now. This is what we're going to wrap our embroidery over. Okay, you can see it is smaller by 1/4 inch than our outer transfer line. Okay, so what I'm going to do on the back is I'm going to use this to center my design, and then just take a blue pen and mark that shape. Okay, and I've got that centered. And then I want to pull up this Helen. Doesn't matter if it all doesn't come up, we just want to get rid of some of the bulk. Okay, and I'm just going to trim it back to that marked line, because we don't want to wrap the pellin around our centre piece, but I do want it to be on the part that we see, because it gives it that nice padded look. The other way you could do this is to cut your oval and centre it exactly behind before you start. Okay, have I cut all that? I think so. Okay, and then I can cut this out on that outer transfer line. I'm actually going to go just a little bit bigger and give myself space to work with. Okay, next what I'm going to do is get a piece of strong thread, so this will be fine. I think it's going to be long enough. And do a running stitch around the outside edge. Don't go too close to the edge, we don't want it to fray out, and don't make your stitch too big or else we won't get a nice smooth edge. Okay, now we're just going to pop our little centre piece. I'm going to put the raw side just in case the black shadows through and makes my white look a little duller, even though we've got that padding on there. Okay, so you're going to pull that as tightly as you can and then secure. Pull it tightly without snapping that thread, otherwise you'll cry. And then tie it off. Okay, trim our thread. Next, we've got it nice and even, so you can just move it around a little bit to get it where you want it. And then we're going to turn it upside down and pop it into our frame. It'll be firm because we've got the fabric going around. There's just a little bit of gap there. And see, it just pops into our frame nicely. Next, what we do is we take our craft glue and we're going to put some glue on the back and just on the outside edge of the timber. And then place our back piece on there and just push it until that is sitting flush with the front frame. So that would, it just popped the embroidery to the front a little bit more. Pop your wonder clips on there or your binding clips, or you can just use pegs or clamps. And then leave that to dry. So it's sitting flush with the front and it's just popped that a little bit further to the front. So we've glued it, remember, in the center and around the edges, so that part and that part are going to glue together with this wedged in between. And then you leave that to dry. In your little kit, you've got this little wall hanger here. If you want to, it does come with a screw. You can use that, or you can simply use some glue and glue your little wall hanger on the back so that you can hang it up on something. Alternatively, you might want to attach it to a project, so you might stitch it onto a bag or a book or a tin or something like that. The frames are only a 3mm MDF, so they're not super strong, so I wouldn't recommend putting it on something that's going to get really thrown around and bashed around and you know, can break easily. And that is our Hugs and Kisses mini frame. I'll show you a few more examples at the end of the video. And thank you for joining me. I hope you've learned some hints and tips. Remember, if you want to order those kits, you can either order this kit, you can also order any of the other mini frames that we sell in all the different sizes, and come up with your own creations. I'd love to see what you do. We're really excited about this product, and we're seeing amazing things being done with lots of people, and we'd love to see yours. So thank you very much for joining me. Remember, if you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Facebook, follow my page, and you will see us pop up now and again with more little mini masterclasses, just to tempt and inspire you and give you some stitching therapy. Bye for now.